All right, well, here we go, another Saturday, episode 4, and I finally come up with a reasonable name for the live stream called a Virtual Elmer. I think that's pretty fitting with what I want to do, and it's Mark here, KA6WKE in sunny Southern California. I don't have a lot of time today. I have about an hour, and especially after last time, episode 3 was 3 hour plus, so I need to get this, keep this one a little short. We're going to go over some of the designs, some of the work I had, and what I did over Thanksgiving to get things ready. So I was live streaming from this setup, which was less than optimal for me. There was just too much stuff on the desks, small place to work, and the bench there, and stuff in the way. I had to stand all the time, and that worked great when I can only spend half an hour or an hour down here, but I'm spending more time as what I call bench therapy. Come down here and be in the quiet, listen to some of the shortwave stations that I can receive, and just lose track of time. So this is what it looked like before Thanksgiving, and then during Thanksgiving, I built this bench system. From these little plastic doodads are called 2x4 basics. I figured for a software engineer, this was the best way I could build a strong set of benches, which you can tell gives me a longer, lets me extend the bench back. Yeah, I'm still a little busy on the right side, but all my tools are within reach. And when you're laying out a bench, you really want that. You don't want to have to stand up and go to a toolbox and back and forth, and it's great exercise, but you definitely don't want to do it all the time, especially if you can spend a few hours. You want everything nice and somewhat neat, and a nice way to work. I have 2 monitors now. So the left one is the main one, is what I use for the streaming service side, and the one right in front of me I use for schematics, parts lists, and things like that when I'm working, so I don't have to move things around on the screen to try and find what I want to do, or what I need to research and things. So that comes in handy. Let's see. So that was about that. So I did complete the first board, and I want to review the part I call stacked building. So when you're building your projects, I recommend that you start with the components that are closest to the board first. So a lot of those are usually resistors and diodes. Some of the higher powered diodes, like this little 1 watt, is lifted off the board a bit for free airflow. There will be a blower, probably a muffin fan, that blows air from left to right across this board for cooling. Some of these transistors can get rather hot, and there are other components that are close to the board too. There are some of these capacitors that are close. These diodes are close. So I put those down first. And how I decide how far to lift something off the board, 1, it depends upon the wattage, and 2, the diameter of, like this 2 watt resistor here. By rule of thumb, I leave 1 radius. I use 1 radius height off the board for power, for any power transistors, so they don't scorch the board and they have airflow around them. They may not generate a lot of heat, but you still want your components to stay cooler, especially solid state components. They want to run cooler, where running tube gear is just the opposite. They get hot, and that's when they work at their best temperatures, is when they're hot. So this is the bridge rectifier for the power supply that's going to connect to the board here to drive the relays. The relays are used for various switching and PTT control and things like that. There's a stand core transformer that'll connect in to provide that. There are sockets, IC sockets. Well, I'm not too sure about those because I prefer just to solder things straight down to the board, but it comes recommended in the instructions, so I sprung 45 cents or whatever it was for those. Mounting those on the board, you have to pay attention to you can see here under the U5, you'll see there's a little dip in the silk screen. You want that dip that's on the IC socket to match. So because your pin 1 will always be on the left, top 1 from the notch. So this one's upside down. This notch is here, so pin 1 will be here. And when you're troubleshooting things, you want to pay attention to where pin 1 is on your different circuits, your ICs. Now when you're mounting power transistors, what I like to do is I take, let me get a heat sink. So to judge the right size of heat of the, what should I say, the distance off the board, what I do is I take a heat sink, one of the heat sinks for it, and I mount the transistor on it like it should be, and then I use that as my gauge. Now, in this case, this heat sink is going to be off the board a little bit, so you can see where the mounting tab, which is connected to probably the center pin of this transistor, the mounting tab shouldn't be flush on the board. You should give it a little bit of room, so that's what I did. And what I did is I bolted this transistor to this heatsink and used that as a guide on how far to mount the transistor through the PCB. So that way you're not, if you mounted it all the way to the tabs, which is real close on this one. If you look on this transistor, you'll see, I don't know if you can show it on this one. These are lifted just a little bit above the board. I know it's a little out of focus here. Try and get that in there for you. There are stop tabs on here, and you can, on your first attempt, install the transistor on those tabs and solder it down, but then you find out you can't attach your heatsink. So what I like to do, like I said, is attach the transistor to the heatsink and then mount, then solder the transistor down to the board, and then remove the heatsink to continue installation. I did that for both of these. There's a third one right here, and this one is a powered. It's going to be a powered transistor. It has to dissipate a lot of power. This heatsink won't fit on the board. It's roughly 4 by 3 by an inch or half an inch thick, and that's going to have to be mounted to the side. I think I'll mount it to the side and just run some heavy-duty wiring over here. So with the stack building going, this is a good example, like right here, where you have two very tall components and a little one in the middle. And yeah, you can bend the components out of the way if you wish, but it's better to build the board up in layers. So as I got this one completed, the taller components were added towards the end. So that would be like these capacitors were in here, these transistors, these relays were all mounted towards the end of the build. I have U3, but I don't have a 6-pin dip. I'll have to find one or not. I don't remember what chip is in here. I could just solder it down to the board. So that completes, other than the shunt resistors for the metering, this completes the board. Added in all the power connections and signal connections for this board on here. I had to drill out the board a little bit to get them to fit. The instructions say to start with these first and hammer them through, and I'm like, well, I don't think that's good for a circuit board to be hammering on it, even if it's empty. So I took a micrometer, measured things, found the right drill bit, and just by hand I drilled out the size to make it correct so they fit properly, and I don't have to worry about damaging the board. Also, like for example, this is a correct, this capacitor is the correct size, and well, not the correct physical size. You can see it's meant to be a larger one, but its value is the same as what's required in the parts list. So it's kind of a lot of hand waving going on here. I hope it works. So we'll have to wait and see, because that'll be testing will be coming up. All right, so that's done. Now we can move on to, and I have been talking away, and the audio has stopped. That's on. Is it off? Oh, no. Okay, hold on. I thought it was off. No, it wasn't. It was going. Oh, good. I want to scope. And, okay. We'll leave that main going. Hide. Hold on, I'm readjusting OBS. Okay. I thought I had it. I thought my audio died. Whew, boy, you make a change in your bench and everything goes wonky. So I started building what's called the G1 board, and following the same concepts with the stacked building, and with laying off, pulling some of the higher powered components off the board. Like here, this resistor right there. Got a gap in that. So these diodes are lifted off for a little breathing room, although they're not going to be handling high current, but still they will get warm. And same with these here, all the same thing. I have all the resistors done. I was hoping to be able to get all the resistors and diodes and things put on the board before this live stream, so then I could finish doing the major components, the larger capacitors and other transistors and things like that. But my last week and a half didn't go as planned, and this is where I'm at. So, and that's one of the reasons why this is going to be a short episode. I'm not going to. If you want to see how I installed all these components, how I do right reading, meaning the values are read, if they're vertical, they're read from top to bottom. Okay, so band 1's up here on the resistor. Now we have a couple of resistors that are vertically mounted right here. And those are mounted where band 1 is on the top. This one's easier to see. Okay. Same with diodes, but you have to pay attention to how they're mounted and where the cathode is. And I bend them so you can see the part number just by looking at it. The part number isn't under the device. And it's the same with these. These are all done that way. I think I got one or two upside down here, but they're all the same. So I'm not too worried about that. Let's see, electrolytic capacitors. So those require paying attention to polarity, plus and minus. And so what is C101? C101, let me find that one. I can't remember what value that is. C101 is 100 microfarad at 385 volts. All right. So that's 47 at 50. What are these? 100 microfarad at, I think I got 450 volts. So here's the thing about capacitors. They have two parameters you have to worry about. One is their actual capacitance value, 100 microfarad. The other one is their voltage rating. You exceed the voltage rating, they will explode, guaranteed, and your bench area will smell like burnt Cheerios. Film at 11. So you need to pay attention to those two. Now for the voltage side of, sorry about that. Full board is what I'm looking for. So for the voltage side of the house, you can always go higher. So for example, I could not find the exact voltage value of 385 volts, but a 450 volt can be substituted. Sometimes the value of the capacitance can be substituted, but you have to be very careful and understand the circuit that it's going in. If it's a bypass or filter capacitor, you don't want to go, a filter capacitor, you can go a little lower maybe, but not recommended. You can go higher within reason, like 10% or 15% to be safe. Voltage, you can always go higher, can never go lower. You will be surprised. Some other capacitors are for bypass, like on bypassing integrated circuits or connections between components for blocking DC and things. There, you can generally go, you have a little more flexibility, but still you have to intimately know how the circuit is working before you can make that substitution. For people building kits, you don't have to worry about it because they all come with all the parts that are correct and on the board. Knowing how to substitute parts comes into play when, for like this one, it came just with a parts list. I had to order everything through DigiKey, so I had to make a few substitutions, and that's what I did. Always, I recommend that you avoid eBay if you can. You want to buy from like Mauser or DigiKey or Farnell, so you know you're getting non-counterfeit parts. I've seen large value capacitors that were marked, but they didn't work, and when I took them apart, there was smaller capacitors inside the can. So there are a lot of counterfeit stuff out there. Stay with the brand names. Nichicon, Panasonic are two that I know of. There's others, I'm sure. So stay with the higher quality parts. So electrolytic capacitors have a band showing the negative lead, and that's this right here. And you'll notice on the board, this one's marked positive and negative. So you want to make sure that it's in there correctly. Now I'm going past the stack building at the moment because I know these components here, we can add them and it's not going to inhibit me from working on other parts of the board. Let's see, what else do I have? This board does handle the higher voltage. This is the grid or screen board that handles the voltages. I think it's around 350 volts. DC at something like 50 milliamps or something. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's part of driving the tube. And there I have a transformer that supplies those voltages that'll be connected to the board. And for testing, we will do a testing. Probably the first Saturday in January. I'll be planning that. And be sure to check out the website. On the live stream page, it's down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. That's where I keep all my updates, my scheduling. I've got a calendar finally figured out that doesn't cost me $50 a year. Couldn't believe that one. And I will be adding notes and things to each live stream about what's coming up. Speaking of what's coming up, the next live stream on December 15th is going to be your first kit. Let me get there. So, your first kit. And from here, this episode will be from the absolute beginning. If you've never built a kit before and you want to learn how to do that, we will start from the complete beginning. So we'll start with the topics are safety and what tools are typically needed for most small kits. We're going to learn how to solder. Actually, I need to add another. Before that, we're going to go over different types of solder, thicknesses, things like that, when to use them. We're going to go over the different types of fluxes that you might need. We will go over the soldering station itself, the different tips, when to use them, how to fix, then we'll go into how to solder. So hopefully you got your, you've ordered, let's see. You've ordered a set of practice boards for this. And mine just came in, and I got these off Amazon. They look to be fairly high quality, so we will be practicing on these boards. You will need some additional wire, just bare wire. We'll go over all the different kinds of soldering joints. A good joint, cold joint, not enough solder, too much solder, and then how to use different tools, soldering braid and soldering sucker, to help fix those mistakes that happen, and because they do. Let's see what else we're doing. We're going to go over all the common components: resistors, diodes, capacitors, transistors, everything that's in the kit. That's linked at the bottom of this page. And the kit comes like this. Just a nice package. And I chose this kit because it has an example of just about every typical part you'll find in the kit. Plus, since it's a general purpose amplifier, audio amplifier, we can use it. Actually has a practical application in your shack, so you can, maybe plug your scanner or your other lower volume or headphone only type gear into this to have regular sound levels, so you don't have to use headphones. So I thought that was a great kit for us to get started with. We'll keep a lab notebook, how to organize your parts. We'll go through the building process. We'll do testing. And then that'll be about it. It's going to be a long stream. It's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 3 hours. We'll take a break. We'll take breaks probably every 45 minutes for like 6-7 minutes. Get your favorite beverage and things like that. And then we'll just keep going until we're all the way finished. So here's all the links. Oops, I need to change screen. Back to browser. So here's all the links to what you need for the kit to purchase. You may already have some of these parts. I hope you really people find this interesting, and if it's popular enough or I get enough requests for it, it may be something I do every quarter for through-hole parts. And yes, I do plan on, I don't want to do all of it, building a surface mount project. So, there we go. Building a surface mount kit. I have one on the bench. It's an antenna analyzer that I desperately need because I got some antenna changes coming up. What I can tell you is it's a little more on the complex side, but don't worry about working with surface mount. I'll show you some techniques to help keep parts down on the board, how to deal with some of us. I don't particularly have this issue, but some hams and makers have their hands are not steady, and I'll give you some techniques to help calm your hands down, how to brace them so they don't shake as much, and you'll be more successful. I haven't planned all of the surface mount out yet, but that'll be worked on probably after the new year. So back to the board. So we got the main power supply filter capacitors. So you can see there's going to be roughly 330 volts AC coming in. This is the full wave bridge rectifier to convert that to a what they call a pulsating DC. And these large filter caps are used to filter that ripple out. So C101 and 102 are the same type. Same type. So again, paying attention to where the negative lead goes. Goes in here. We'll bend the boards. Oh, I got a loose resistor over there. We'll bend them out so they stay on the board when I flip it over. And then we will solder them down. What I like to do for electrolytic capacitors is to push it down so part of the lead goes with the trace. Now we'll be trimming those off. They're not going to stay that length. I do this because it gives, instead of having all the current go through just a small little square here and a blob of solder, it gives it a larger surface area. So the power that's going to be here is spread out over a larger area of copper. So let's get those soldered down. Where is my roll? All right, give that a few seconds to cool off. And we'll trim those bad boys down. All right. So that came out pretty clean looking. careful with the end of these. When you're trimming your leads, it's real easy to, they're very sharp, it's real easy to accidentally cut through your trace below. So you want to make sure that there's a little bit of a gap there. All right, so those are down. We've got one more over here. That's C105. And the C105 is right here. It's a 470 microfarad at 35 volts. I think I'm done with those two. 20 microfarad. So by process of elimination, this one is it. So this particular brand is Nichicon, another high quality electrolytic capacitor, one of the brands I recommend. But you'll find a lot of electronics that have unknown brands, unknown names and things like that. So I tend to stay away from those and just go with spend the money, a little extra money, and get what you need. Get the well-known high-quality part. So again, the board's marked plus and minus. The minus is always the shortest lead. If the band is not here, I haven't seen it in a long time, always go with the shortest lead. That'll be your negative. Turn that on. We'll flip it over. Get my out of the way. Lay those down to match the trace. Solder them down. Don't forget to fill in that hole's a little too large, but for the brands that I have. Okay. There we go. Let that cool off. Trim. Trim. And there we go. Those are the higher voltage capacitors that are in there. They look like skyscrapers compared to the rest of the parts. We got one more here. That's C103, and that's a 220 microfarad at 200 volts, which I have. Who makes these? Oh, Nichicon as well. Plus and minus. Now these don't quite. Okay, this will work. These are for a common. The footprint that was used was for probably an older type of capacitor that had it was fatter. It just had a larger footprint. There we go. It had a larger footprint, so newer capacitors, more modern ones, they're smaller. They have better manufacturing techniques, and they can make components with the exact same values in a smaller footprint. So let's get this soldered down. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Let that cool off. So by looking at the solder joint, to tell if you have a good one, is how it has a nice shine to it, a sheen on it. And we'll go over that during your first kit episode on making nice clean solder joints and identifying solder joints that are bad. I think I can create bad solder joints. I've been soldering for 36 years. Pretty sure I can create some bad ones, but I've been practicing this a long time. All right, lift it a little bit. There we go. Again, being careful not to grab the trace. Also, with power supplies, when you're working on power supplies, be generous with your solder. Make sure it's got more than you would normally use for regular components and things. This is because they handle higher voltages, higher currents, and you don't want a small solder pad, a little tiny solder pad here that would offer higher resistance and in some cases can actually get hot enough to melt the joint. And you don't want to do that. Here's a resistor I forgot to do. It's just hanging there all by itself. So we'll get that tacked down. Cut off. All right, so pretty much wrapping it up for today. I don't know what happened to the live stream. Again, I moved everything around, and I don't know what. I'm not sure what happened with that, but I'll check it out before the next one. Have a better stand for Mark scope here, so we can look at parts, small parts. So with that, I'm going to say 7-3 for now, and I will see you all, hopefully, well, virtually see, on my first kit build on December 15th. Be sure to go to the webpage and order the stuff. If you already have tools and a soldering station, things like that, and that's fine too. You can use whatever you wish. And we will start at the top. This is one of the few episodes I have prepared for. All the previous episodes with this amplifier build project are unscripted. I just jump into wherever I am, and we just work through things. Granted, this project is not beginner, but these are the projects I already had in flight that I was already working on, and I wanted to get experience doing live streams and concentrating on that side of the house, and realizing that my previous setup was awful, so building a whole new bench and that's what these are for. We will have more complex projects as time goes on. I've got a long list of things I like to build, but we're going to start with some beginner stuff and get more people comfortable with building their kits. I'm even thinking about going through finding another kit where you have to actually order the parts, and we'll go through ordering parts, how to order them, how to how to figure out substitutions, part substitutions, and and stuff like that. Really, it's the substitutions that are the big one when you're ordering parts on your own. So it's now 11:21 Pacific Standard Time. 7-3. Have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I will see you. Oh, wait a minute! I still got one more live stream. I'm already on the 15th in my brain. I will see you on 12:15. 7-3.